You're listening to episode 26 of Literacy in Color. Welcome to the Literacy in Color podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Sullivan, a science of reading advocate with over a decade of experience as a reading interventionist and literacy coach. I'm passionate about making evidence-based instruction both effective and engaging. If you're interested in captivating our learners on reading fluently and understanding language, or as I like to call it, keeping it colorful, then you've found the right place. Each week, we'll explore intriguing lit bits and practical strategies around the science of reading and structured literacy to help you be colorful and teach colorfully. Are you ready to bring literacy to life? Let's color outside the lines and make an impact together. Hey everyone, welcome back to Literacy in Color. I'm so excited for today's episode because we're diving into one of my all-time favorite topics, and it's something that can truly transform our students' ability to read, spell, and understand words: morphology. If you know me, you know I'm a total word nerd, and proudly so, and I firmly believe that understanding morphology can be a game changer in your literacy instruction. If you've ever wondered why some kids struggle to decode multisyllabic words or spell bigger words accurately, or perhaps why vocabulary instruction sometimes just falls flat, understanding morphology might be the missing puzzle piece. So today we're doing a quick Morphology 101 all about the basics. We're going to set the stage with defining some terms to ensure that we're all on the same page. So get comfy and let's talk morphemes. So let's start with the basics. What is morphology exactly? Well, let's actually use morphology to take this big word apart. We have the Greek combining form, M-O-R-P-H, meaning form or shape, followed by a connector vowel O, and then L-O-G-Y, meaning the study of. So morphology is the study of meaningful forms, the meaningful structural units or morphemes within a language, as well as how these units are combined to create words. Aside from morphology, the word morpheme too has that Greek form M-O-R-P-H, again meaning form or shape. And then we have E-M-E, which is French for little bit. So a morpheme is a little bit of form or structure. It's essentially the littlest bit, or I suppose smallest bit is a bit more grammatically correct, the smallest bit of meaning within a word. The word morpheme in and of itself has two morphemes, M-O-R-P-H and then E-M-E. So I'll juxtapose this to some words you likely already know: phoneme and grapheme. A phoneme is the smallest bit of sound in our language. So for example, A and K are phonemes. A grapheme would be the smallest bit of writing in our system. So for example, the letter A representing A, or the letters CK representing K, those are graphemes. So let's test your morphemic knowledge. I'm going to give you a series of words, and I want you to try to decide how many morphemes are in that word. First word, jumping. 2 morphemes. We have our base element, J-U-M-P, plus suffix, ing. We're doing the action right now this second. Next example, teacher. 2 morphemes. We have that base element, T, E-A-C-H, and then suffix er, one who teaches. How about redesigned? This one is tricky. It has 4 morphemes. Did you get it? This word actually has 2 prefixes, re and de. Then we have our base element, S-I-G-N, and suffix ed. We designed something again in the past. Next word, transportation. 4 morphemes. We have the Latin prefix trans, meaning across or beyond. We have our Latin base element, port, meaning carry. We have a suffix ate, which is a word-forming element which is creating verbs. And then another suffix, ion, showing the state or condition of. So it's the state of carrying something across. All right, here's another word, elephant. This is a big one, right? And fun fact, elephants are my favorite animals. But elephant is only one morpheme. You cannot break this word down further into smaller, meaningful units. Last one. We're going to end it on a simple note. Cats. Unlike elephant, it's a simple word. It's a one-syllable word, but it has two morphemes. We have the base CAT and suffix S, denoting a plural noun, multiple cats. So I hope that was a fun little activity and maybe it was eye-opening for you. And here's the thing, knowledge of morphemes isn't as cut and dry as phonics. In phonics, we typically learn all the major sound spelling correspondences between kindergarten and second grade. If you got those down, you're set. However, acquisition of morphemes goes into adulthood. Of course, there are some high-utility, high-impact morphemes we can explicitly teach students in elementary school and really starting in kindergarten. But I have to say, as a grown, literate adult, I myself am learning new morphemes every day. And I say this so you don't feel discouraged if you answered incorrectly to one or maybe even all of those examples prior. The deeper you get into morphology, the more morphological awareness you'll develop, and this is even as an adult. So morphology, it's the study of how words are structured and formed. Essentially, it's looking at words and asking, what are their meaningful parts? How is this word structured? And unlike phonics, which focuses on letter-sound relationships, morphology focuses on the meaning units, how prefixes, base elements, and suffixes come together to create new words. And just to make things clear, I think both are fundamentally important components of our literacy instruction. Phonics and morphology go together like a horse and carriage. I will never advocate for one and not the other. In fact, I think that instruction is incomplete when we talk about one and not the other. Because the thing is, English is what we call a morphophonemic language. It's governed by morphology and phonology, the meaning units and the sound units. But what's really interesting is that English spelling favors consistency within the meaning units over the sound units. So when we have words that are seemingly irregular like does, and we think in terms of phonology only, English seems crazy. Like, why on earth is OE representing the sound? However, when we consider the meaning units, does is simply a base element do, with suffix es. I do my homework, she does her homework. And actually, it shares a spelling pattern with another familiar word, go. I go to the park, she goes to the park. The spelling is consistent and completely regular. The sound is just a bit unexpected. So I believe that tackling morphology at a young age is important. When students understand how words are built, they acquire these reading and spelling superpowers. Now, I said this is Morphology 101, so let's get into the different types of morphemes in our language. Morphemes come in two major categories. There are free morphemes and there are bound morphemes. Free morphemes can stand alone as a word. They don't need anything attached or affixed to them in order to be used in our language. So essentially, a single solitary base word is a morpheme. In fact, we can start with this concept early on in a child's educational career, in the primary grades. It's simply understanding that a word is a word and that it carries meaning. Cat is a morpheme. Dog is a morpheme. Run is a morpheme. These are all bases, and they all just happen to be CVC words. What a great way to infuse that with what you're already doing in the classroom. Now, free morphemes can further be broken down into two categories. We have content words, like the bases we just mentioned, and we also have function words. So think of function words like some of our high-frequency words, and, but, the. They help connect ideas in a sentence. They can stand alone, but they don't have much substance to them in terms of meaning. Now, bound morphemes, on the other hand, cannot stand alone as words. When something is bound, it's tied up, it's fastened or confined to something. Think of the binding of a book as fastening all the loose pages together. That's a fun analogy, actually, so let's run with it. A bound morpheme is like a single page, and it needs to be fastened to other pages in order to create that book, to tell that story. A bound morpheme must be fastened or affixed to other morphemes in order to be used in our language. Bound morphemes can further be broken down into subcategories, one being base elements that cannot stand alone as words. Think of these as our Greek or Latin bases, like the Latin rupt, meaning burst, like in rupture, or the Greek chron, meaning time, like in chronological. Some people like to call these roots. However, after reading Sue Hegland's book, Beneath the Surface of Words, and other works, I prefer using the all-encompassing term base element to refer to both free and bound bases, thinking about the morpheme that holds the core meaning of a word. Now, affixes, like prefixes and suffixes, are other types of bound morphemes. The word affix quite literally means to fasten. So it's a morpheme that is fastened onto another morpheme. Prefixes have the prefix pre, meaning before. So prefixes come before a base element, and suffixes come after a base element. We have the assimilated prefix suf, which is an assimilated form of sub, meaning behind. So behind the base or after the base. So some common prefixes are re, meaning again or back, like in rewatch. We have un, meaning not, like in untie. We have pre, meaning before, like in preheat. And some common suffixes include ed, which is a verb tense showing something that happened in the past, like planted. We have less, meaning free from or without, like in careless. And we have ion, which is used to form nouns, meaning a state or condition, like in prediction. It's the result of predicting, right? Suffixes can further be broken down into two categories. We have inflectional suffixes and derivational suffixes. Essentially, inflectional suffixes typically either show verb tense, like that ed denoting the past tense. They might compare things, like an er in bigger, and they might even influence the number of things, like the plural s in cats. Derivational suffixes, on the other hand, they often change the part of speech. So let's take the word predict. Inflectional suffixes give us words like predicts, predicted, predicting. They're all verbs. But watch what happens when we use derivational suffixes. Prediction, it's a noun. Predictive, it's an adjective. That's cool, right? Honestly, we can do a whole podcast episode on this alone, so we can go deeper into that on another day. To recap, we have two major categories of morphemes. Free morphemes can stand alone. Bound morphemes need to be fixed to something else in order to be pronounced in a word. And notice throughout this episode, I've been spelling out morphemes. This is because a morpheme does not have a pronunciation until it's fixed to a word. Multimorphemic words can be made up of base elements, prefixes, and suffixes, and even connective vowels. Connectives function as glue in some of our words that may be rooted in Latin or Greek. Let's do another quick little activity. I'm going to give you a series of words, and I want you to identify the prefix, the base, and the suffix. First word, unbelievable. What's the prefix? un. What's the base? In this case, I'll say the word out loud instead of spelling it. Believe. And what's the suffix? able. What's the meaning of unbelievable? Not able to be believed. Let's try another one. Previewing. What's the prefix? pre. What's the base? view, view. What's the suffix? ing. And what's the meaning of previewing? Viewing something beforehand. All right, last one. Respected. What's the prefix? re. What's the base? spect, which is Latin for look. And what's the suffix? ed. And what's the meaning of respected? To look back in high regard. So even if a student has never seen these words in print before, if they know some high utility, high frequency, high impact morphemes, it can help them tackle reading the word, spelling the word, and most importantly, understanding the word. So as we wrap things up, why should we be teaching morphology in a structured literacy classroom? First of all, it boosts decoding skills. When students know morphemes, they don't just sound out words. They recognize meaningful chunks, making reading more efficient. Secondly, it supports spelling. Morphological instruction helps students see patterns in words and how words are actually structured, making spelling more logical instead of just memorizing long letter sequences, especially when you get into those bigger multimorphemic and multisyllabic words. Then it expands vocabulary. Instead of teaching isolated words, students learn word parts that help them figure out hundreds of words. And finally, it strengthens comprehension. When students recognize word parts, they can infer the meanings, leading to stronger reading comprehension. All right, friends, that's our quick Morphology 101 crash course. Morphology is truly one of the most powerful tools we can give our students, making decoding easier, vocabulary richer, and comprehension stronger. If you're loving these bite-sized deep dives, make sure to subscribe and share this episode with a fellow educator. And if you want ready-to-use morphology resources, check out the Colorful Literacy Toolkit, my membership site filled with structured literacy resources to support you in your instruction. Thanks for hanging out with me today, and as always, keep making a difference one reader at a time. Thank you so much for tuning into Literacy in Color. I hope today's episode left you feeling both inspired and equipped with something new to add to your teaching toolkit. If you're enjoying this podcast, it would truly mean so much to me if you'd leave a 5-star review. It helps other educators find the show and join our colorful community. And don't forget to hit the follow or subscribe button so you never miss an episode. For more tips, tools, and resources, be sure to check out the links in the show notes at michelleandthecolorfulclassroom.com. Thanks again for listening, and I'll catch you next week. Until then, be colorful and teach colorfully.